Thank you for clicking on this video. Welcome friends to PastQuest. My name is Aolda Haramon, and I will never forget the night my father looked me straight in the eye and said loud enough for the whole room to hear, "Only important people are invited, not you." The laughter around him stung worse than the words. He wasn't joking. He meant it. At 75, standing tall in front of his friends at the Fisherman's Hall, my father decided to erase me from his story, as if decades of service in uniform, deployments, and lives I had held together on blood-soaked ground counted for nothing. That sentence cracked something inside me, the same way it had when I was a girl, and he told everyone my brother was the Haramon worth bragging about. Years later, nothing had changed. In that moment, I wasn't his daughter. I was his punchline. What no one in that hall knew yet was that I had just been promoted to colonel in the United States Air Force. And what my father had tried to keep small was about to be pulled into the light in front of everyone he'd worked so hard to impress. When I came back to New Bedford, the salt still clung to the streets the way it always had, heavy and familiar, like a town that never forgot its own past. I hadn't been home in years, not since the military swallowed most of my adult life, and yet nothing about my father's house had changed. The same clapboard siding weathered by storms, the same brass ship's bell by the door, the same silence that filled every corner whenever I walked inside. He was in the living room polishing a wooden model of a schooner, rubbing at its mast with the kind of focus he used to give to his fishing boats. His hands, though older and slower, still carried the authority of a man who expected the world to bend around him. I asked him about the birthday party, careful, almost hopeful, if he needed anything from me, if there was a way I could help. He didn't look up. His voice was flat, deliberate, sharpened by years of knowing exactly how to cut. "Only important people are invited, not you." The words landed like salt in an old wound. The same wound that had never healed. I felt my jaw tighten. Years of uniform and chain of command had trained me to answer in control, not in anger. So I did what came naturally. "Copy," I said quietly. He went back to polishing the mast as though I hadn't spoken, as though I wasn't even in the room. I stood there long enough to feel the weight of his dismissal press against my ribs, then turned toward the door. There was nothing left to argue, nothing left to win from him. I decided I'd leave a single gift, a framed photograph of my mother, the one thing that had always belonged to me, and walk away before the band struck its first note. He thought he had drawn the line of who counted as important. What he didn't know, what no one in that hall yet knew, was that tonight those words would unravel, and the story he had written about me would never hold again. My earliest memories of comfort belonged to my mother, Ella Lehner. She had the kind of quiet strength that made rooms feel safe, even when the storm outside was inside our house. She died when I was 20, her heart giving out after years of carrying burdens too heavy to name. Before she left, she pressed a chipped porcelain teacup into my hands, its rim uneven, its handle worn smooth. "Don't let your father make you small," she whispered, as though it were a commandment, not advice. I've carried those words the way some people carry scripture. My father never wasted his breath on me the way he did on Elliot. Elliot was his pride, his golden boy, law school in Boston, a polished suit, the kind of son a man brags about down at the docks. I remember dinners where Dad leaned back in his chair, retelling Elliot's courtroom victories, his voice rising with pride. Meanwhile, my mother quietly slipped the best piece of fish onto my plate, her eyes saying what she never dared out loud, "I see you." By 19, I couldn't breathe under that roof anymore. I enlisted in the Air Force and chose medical service, patching up the broken, standing in the space between life and death in Afghanistan. Dust caked my uniform as I knelt over a young private torn open by shrapnel, my palm pressed against his chest, blood seeping between my fingers. And I said the only thing that mattered: "Stay with me. Breathe." He did. Moments like that turned me into a leader, not by title but by necessity. Yet here, back home, none of that ever seemed to count. To my father, I was still just the daughter who left. To the town, I was Arthur Harriman's girl who went off to do something vague with the military. Elliot was the one they pointed to with pride. I was the afterthought. And beneath every handshake, every smile, I could feel it, the quiet dismissal that said, "She's not the important one." The fisherman's hall buzzed with voices and clinking glasses the night of my father's celebration. I walked in wearing my dress blues, each ribbon measured to regulation, polished shoes reflecting the weak glow of the neon sign above. The smell of salt and old nets clung to coats draped over chairs, and a sheet cake on the corner table sagged under melting frosting. I moved toward the donation box, envelope in hand, ready to slide it in and disappear. Then my father stepped into my path. His smile stretched wide for the audience gathered around him. His voice carried just enough to reach every ear nearby. "Only important people are invited, not you." The words fell heavy, silencing the room for a breath. Then came the careful clatter of glasses lifted. The forced murmur of conversation meant to cover the sting. My chest tightened in that familiar way, the instinct to vanish before anyone else felt awkward on my behalf. My hand brushed against the challenge coin in my pocket, the metal warm from my grip, a reminder of who I really was. I turned, ready to walk out. That's when I felt it, a firm hand catching my sleeve. A calm, steady voice rang out, clear enough to cut through every pretense in the hall. "Ma'am, this way." I lifted my eyes and saw her, General Catherine Duval, 4 stars on her shoulder, the woman who had mentored me through years of service. She stood tall, unbothered, every bit the embodiment of authority and grace. The room froze. My father's face blanched, his practiced smile cracking. For the first time in a lifetime, I wasn't small. I was undeniable. When General Duval's hand closed around mine, she guided me toward the stage. The fisherman's hall seemed to hold its breath. The hum of chatter cut off. Chairs creaked as men shifted uneasily. Old fishermen who'd weathered 1,000 storms removed their caps, pressing them to their chests. A few younger men straightened their ties as if neatness might shield them from the shift in air. The weight in the room thickened into something close to reverence. Then her voice carried, firm and unshaken. "Tonight we recognize Colonel Aolda Harriman." The title rang through the hall like a bell. Across the tables, my father sat stiff, his mouth twisting into that half-smile he wore when he thought he was clever. But this time no laughter followed. His story had ended. Mine had just begun.
Thanks for watching PastQuest. If you enjoyed the journey into history, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing stories from the past. See you in the next quest.